So what factors really affect like how we go through this? Some of those are more obvious than others, but who the person was, husband, wife, child, sibling, mother, whatever. Okay, so who that person was and what the relationship was to us is very important. And then the following, like the nature of that attachment. So, you can have, and I've seen this, I had a family here where there were, I think, 5 adult women whose mom had died, and the dad and these 5 adult women came in to see me because all the 5 girls, women, they couldn't agree with each other anymore, like about anything. They were getting more and more upset with each other because they were grieving in a different way. And one was accusing the other of not caring. The other was saying, oh, you're just the drama queen. You're over the top. There's no reason you need to be. And they had all these different, feelings about one another. And they weren't able to get past the reality that, A, they could grieve differently, but the strength of their attachment was very different. The one who called mom every night before she went to bed, even as a 40-some-year-old, let's say, really struggled. Whereas the one that lived far away and, talked to or saw her mom maybe once every few months, didn't find it as difficult. That's just normal. That doesn't mean one loves more or whatever. It has to do with that nature of that attachment. Whether the person provides security in her life. A woman I knew who I had seen whose husband was a police officer, she was very traumatized by the death of her husband because she didn't realize how much security that he provided. Whether we're ambivalent about the relationship, we didn't really care one way or the other, whether there were previous conflicts. Those kind of things always come up when we're talking about grieving, and that those type of things come back to us. Whether we're dependent kind of people. The mode of death is very important, but I want to say something about this, and what I mean by that is whether it was like a sudden death, like I talked about the motorcycle accident, or whether it was a long illness. Now, most people who are here and have gone through hospice, say, but not everyone here maybe have done that, but then those would typically be people who had a longer illness. And what troubles me again about this is that the world seems to think those of you who have had someone dying in your life for a long time, you were ready. You had all the time to say goodbye, all that stuff, okay? Whereas the one that had the sudden death never had that, so therefore theirs is much harder. When the reality is, and I've seen many people in both camps, the reality is I'm convinced they go through something very similar. It's just that the timing and what they're focused on is very different. The one who maybe had the accidental death focused a lot on how quick it all happened and the trauma, and versus the one who had the death, say, in a long illness, basically is focused on, after the death part, starts to replay all the choices, all the decisions, all the declining of the person. No one likes to see a loved one going through that dying process. So for the most part, and it's interesting because this just happened to me on Sunday night where people started to get into this almost in a group setting like this, there were more people, but almost like, well, whose grief is harder? Like, well, I had, and I had this, and it's an interesting thing that we do as human beings, but I think in my mind, it's all very hard for all of us because whether you're 85-year-old so-and-so recently died or someone's, different, younger age, to you, that was the most important person versus maybe if we did a scale of, we just let the general public rate it, they may look at it differently. But we should try to get out of that, like, competing for the toughest grief. The other mode here that's important is the proximity. In other words, where they were when it happened, or as I said before, the one daughter who lives on the West Coast, mom dies on the East Coast, isn't going to find it as hard as the daughter who lived around the corner or whatever. It's just a fact of the way this tends to work. They even showed in studies when the shuttle blew up that the people who saw it live on the East Coast had a very different response than those who were on time delay when the original Challenger, that they saw it differently. So proximity has a lot to do with it. How many previous losses we've had, that doesn't just mean deaths. If you have had a divorce, if you've lost your job, if you've had some other losses and or, deaths in the family, and then someone dies, that makes it much harder. And so all these items start to stack up and they start to make it more and more complicated. Coping, how people cope. Some people are good at getting through the tough things that life throws at them, and other people struggle. So that's just another one of the factors. The support systems is very, very important as well. People who are alone is very hard. The more people you have, friends, family, churches, synagogues, whatever clubs you might belong, the more of that we have, the better. But unfortunately, even though you may have a lot of support systems, you might find yourself realizing that a lot of those support systems aren't very helpful. In matter of fact, sometimes they're not so helpful. Younger people tell me all the time that their friends who they really need are not always that helpful, because a lot of times younger people don't want to deal with someone else's issues, and they try to distract them. And so sometimes that's good, and other times that can be difficult. And then lastly, how many other factors are in someone's life to cause stress? Financial difficulties, as I said, job problems. That was the person who was providing the income. Now I don't know how I'm going to live. All of those kind of things can complicate or make the grieving difficult.